Hey, Corbin.
Hey William, how you doing, man?
I'm all right, man. How are you?
I'm good. I saw a bunch of posts from you in London. Looked like an awesome event.
No, it was good. Yeah, it was good. It
There's so
was
much
nice.
happening in London. I'm jealous.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm not in London. Me too. I'm jealous. The
Are
guys
you
over
are
there
you
are
close? Are you
amazing.
close? Are you in
Yeah, in Amsterdam. So,
Amsterdam? Okay, not too far.
yeah, 40 minutes flight. It's okay.
Nice.
Hey, Marsh.
Hello.
Hey Marsh.
Where are you based, Corbin?
San Francisco. Bay Area. Yep. Yeah, it's been fascinating. I'm trying to get him to join my team in based in London, so hopefully he can attend some of the London events locally because
Cool.
Where are you in San Francisco? Just so I can visualize who I'm, where, like what I'm talking to, what part of the city.
no, I live in the East Bay, so I just use that as
Oh, okay.
reference. But
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Lafayette, if you know where that is.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, where are you?
I'm right next to Mount Davidson. Mount Davidson is right there, and
Nice,
Twin Peaks is over there. So that should tell you. I'm West Portal area.
cool. I guess we need San Francisco coffee or something.
There you go. It's a surprising lack of platform meetup in San Francisco.
Yeah, there's an opportunity there for sure.
There you go. You got.
Too
You
many
got.
little projects, too little time. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the two of you. There's the two of you. I can see that happening.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
William, where are you?
Amsterdam, Netherlands.
Oh, wow. Cool.
If you're coming by, we can get coffee over here.
I haven't been there in 22 years. So, well, 23.
All right.
Too long.
Times for a times for a comeback.
Yeah, I really love Amsterdam. It's such a great city. My wife thought it was just because I like the coffee shops there, but I was like, it has nothing to do with that. It's just really beautiful and such a great place. I love the biking culture.
Yeah, I like it too. Just drop the message in the channel.
Yeah, so I think I don't know what Abby had planned, but when I was asking her to set this up, my thought was um, there was kind of two things I think that where we kind of left off on this. One was this notion about moving away from the sort of true false questioning into something a little bit more multiple choice, right? So there was some sample questions that I put out to kind of model what would it look like if we had multiple choice, right? Um, and there was some interesting things going through that experience. So maybe I can talk a little bit about that today as we kind of evolve. And then the second thing is now we have the spreadsheet, which allows us to kind of start to align the answers to the model, right? Um, and there's an interesting nuance around that, which is like it sort of introduces this other thing around scoring. Uh, or some kind of idea around scoring. It seemed like anyway. So those are maybe a few of the topics we can chat about today. Is there anything else that people have want to raise as well?
I would like to bring one thing forward because there is KubeCon coming up, so a lot of people have their heads wrapped around that, rightfully. Um, so when I was in London, I spoke with Abby as well, and I thought like the focus that we should definitely be on the questions, right? It should definitely be on the questions and the format, how we put in the questions together. Um, Fair enough. So I mean, it seems that we all don't agree with the true or false. Fair enough. So what I thought is, I think that we need to put a little bit more focus that we are now. We all went around. I wrote an app. Somebody put spreadsheet. Somebody put document. There is um, a lot of will to do. A lot of the little direction. So, what if we would set up right after KubeCon 5 meetings where we go through the aspects. Each meeting is an aspect, let's say investment, let's say monitoring, let's say whatever. And we go through the questions of that aspect together. And hopefully, some of us have sometimes to put together some proposals for questions and answers so that we focus a little bit the work on those questions and answers. So I don't know if Abby joined because she was also was saying, oh, yeah, she's there.
I'm
So
here.
we were, yeah, we were speaking about that, Abby. So in London. So what you want to say something about it?
Yeah, no, just the summary being if we allocate a hour to just diving into each aspect of like what the question should be, then we'll come out of it with a handful of questions for each aspect that we can then look at as like a collective. And so the idea, I guess, being from you, William, was that like if there's 5 aspects and then sort of a calibration week in kind of 12 weeks, essentially every other week for 6 weeks, six meetings, we would end up with a set of questions with a sort of concrete timeline on it. And I think that's been our challenge right now, is trying to figure out how to get questions written. So yeah.
Yeah, I thought that if we have a timeline and a defined piece of work to do, I mean, we have a defined piece of work now, is the assessment, but let's define it a little bit more and make discrete sessions where we work on a set of questions for the aspect. I think we would optimize a bit um, the focus and the work.
Yeah, so I totally agree with that. I think I tried to start with that first
Colin,
section.
Colin, if you don't
Colin,
mind just muting.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, got a
I
few
thought it.
zippers there.
I thought it. Yeah, I thought it did out of the box. Sorry. I'm on
But
the
nice to see
browser
you.
version. I'm here. I just got off with Valentina, so hopping over.
No stress. Sorry, go on, Corbin.
Well, I was just saying that I did try to do that with that first section, or at least like I just put out some questions. I do think we should get some folks to kind of volunteer to maybe pick a section that they're passionate about. It would probably be good to have at least 2 people to like kind of create different points of view around what some of the questions should be. Because I feel like the questions
William,
that
your
I
turn to
started
mute.
with, yeah, it was like the questions I started with were like, from my jaded point of view, right? Like, so, um, it's hard to really, I mean, I think the benefit of working here in the community is getting more voices, right? And broader perspective. So,
Cool. So, in your opinion, Corbin and William is raising this, and anyone else on the call, do you think that it's something that we could try and generate question if the questions are narrow, if the topic is narrow enough, as in it's a single aspect instead of like questions about everything maturity model, do you think we could generate the questions on a call, or are you proposing that it's best we have sort of questions pre-written to then sort of massage them on the call, or like iterate on them on the call? What do people think is a better use of our time?
um, I have I think that is functionally better if we work on the questions and answers offline, and we come together in the call and we go through it. Uh, Maybe we can, of course, put them in a document for each one of the aspects, but very, very, very specific work, meaning one document, aspect investment, and the questions and answers that we have in there, and we select a pool of them. So I think that would work good.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. If I can add to that, the one thing I think might be helpful is to identify what it is we're trying to learn with each question, right? I think otherwise we could generate a bunch of questions that may be overlapping in ways. So if we can figure out what it is we think would help us measure for each of these aspects, and then design the questions to fit what we're looking to measure, or I wonder if that would be useful, and maybe we discover it isn't, we abandon it.
Well, we could try and do that maybe. So that's a good maybe test of today. Like if today we took one aspect and tried to define like, okay, what are the big overarching questions for this aspect that we're trying to like tease out through questions, then we basically are setting an aspect up for success, hopefully, and testing out that like sort of process. Because then we can do that for others, if that makes sense.
I like that.
So we have that. So I think we have like a bit of a prototype of that right now. Right?
Cool.
Like we have the questions that I added multiple choice options to. And I think right before you joined, Abby, I was just talking about that experience of writing those questions and moving, kind of from the true false to the multiple choice. It was pretty interesting. So I guess, Marsh, to like kind of hit on that a little bit, the questions that I wrote this second go around were, I would say, much more tightly aligned to the maturity model, in the sense that if I thought about one of the themes for, if you look at the maturity model and the characteristics, I tried to model an answer that kind of mapped to one of those, right? And it's not super clean. Like there's like, it's not super easy to do. So there's still some gaps, I would say, in the ones that I, kind of put forth for that first category. I think it'd be interesting to kind of walk through that as a team and just kind of like, look at what the gaps are and some of the challenges. Maybe you did that through the spreadsheet exercise. Also, like it's pretty hard, right? I would say one of the key differences between the sort of true false or yes no format and multiple choice is a yes no question can answer like one, I would say like one maturity level thing, right? So like at this maturity, maybe it's like platform as a product is like the question, and if you have a product manager is the answer, right? You can ask a very pointed question at that one thing, and it kind of gives you like, are you at this maturity or no kind of thing. Whereas like the question that asks the spectrum, right, which says at this level you have this, at this level you might have this thing and this thing and this thing, it becomes a little harder. And I think we talked about like back testing and like other things that we can do to kind of like, so I still think that, having some form of combination of these questions is probably going to be useful. But it was hard to kind of create a question that looked at like, one aspect of something and then covered the whole spectrum from kind of, immature to mature, if we want to look at it along that continuum.
I think that's a good point. I think oh sorry, William, you had your hand raised. Please go. I was looking down.
No, let's go for it. Go for it.
I apologize. I was just gonna say I think you're right on the nose with the like needing a bit of both on questions. I also think like as in both being true, false, and multiple choice. And I also think we need to be acknowledging that the big cliff in the industry right now is between operational and scalable. Right? That's 2 and 3. If I'm going to put numbers to it. And it's like, that is where we're going to have to spend the majority of our energies, I think, right? We can probably figure out if somebody is in 1 or 4, at least 1 fairly quickly, if they're sort of in that ad hoc stage. We don't need 6 questions to get there, but figuring out that subtlety between operational, like I have stuff automated a bit, and I have stuff like I have stuff in infrastructure as code versus I have stuff in a self-service way, or like in a hands-off kind of situation. Those are a little bit more nuanced, and so yeah, some things just to think about as we try and create those questions. But sorry, William, please go.
Yeah, I do agree with most, if not all, that was said. What I'm what I'm thinking is, are we trying to? So going back to what Marsha said, right? Meaning understand what we want to measure and how we want to measure it. Yeah, is it a matter of, are we trying to measure something, or are we trying to understand the where something is located, as if something is where somebody is at each specific, where an initiative is at a specific stage of the at each specific part of the organization. So part of an organization can be very mature in terms of in all aspects, and another part of the organization is not mature, is very mature in part of investment. They have backing, they have all the whistles, everything, but they are not at an operational level. Because they have the budget, the investment is mature, but they do not have yet the implemented and the self-service, the infrastructure as code is being built up. So I think with the questions are more conversational, because we need to. There is a necessary follow-up that needs to be done after we have those answers. So I'm not sure if I explained myself, but Marsh, you want to say something? I think Marsh was first.
Yeah, Abby said something that got me thinking, which was, could we identify pretty quickly if someone's in the first category? And that's a different approach in some ways than the aspects breaking down. Like you can imagine everyone does a 25 question survey and gets a calculation at the end that shows you how strong you were, as strong as pejorative, where you were assessed in each of those different aspects is one way. But I think it's an interesting thing to think about. What are the sort of emergent behaviors you might spot in a different way that would tell you? And some of those can be like roles. Like, do you, maybe that gets to the organizational piece or the investment piece somehow when you've structured the organization to support your team. Like, I think Corbin mentioned a question earlier. Do you have a product manager? And maybe it's that, do you have someone who fills the product manager role? Because maybe there's someone on the team who is the acting product manager because you haven't found the right product manager for it. And so, the question might be something like, would people agree on who fulfills the product management role in your group? Something like that. Anyway, you just got me thinking, Abby, about how to, whether aspects is the right approach. I'm not saying we question that. It feels like a good way forward and we should keep on that. But one question I think we should keep in the back of our minds is, what are the emergent properties that we might identify, so we can narrow that way. Anyway, it's interesting.
Firstly?
Yeah, just listening to what you were saying, as an end user, I liked the conversational style of Corbin's questions. When we had the original doc, the fact it was used kind of in real conversations, I did like that. I mean, there was some feedback on the questions themselves, a couple of them, but don't lose that, right? I really liked the way it was building up a narrative and it was taking us through a journey and asking those questions, and it wasn't so much about the maturity model, because the maturity model is just a model, right? In real life, I'm a temporary product owner at the moment, right? But we've still got a product owner. From a finance perspective, I've had this conversation with people in here in the past. Big orgs don't operate the way that small orgs operate. So in big orgs, we don't have that. We need to talk to finance and all these things that some people think you do. It doesn't work like that. We have cascaded money. We have, different ways of working, right? So the bigger the org, the model challenges are subtly different, but it still falls into that bucket. Do you have finance? Yes. Is it agreed? Yes. Right. There's ways of doing it. It's just maybe not the same as some other orgs. And I like the conversational style because it helped build that narrative. If we were replaying some of that back, which is like, right, you said these things, and we've pulled out some of the key things that we actually want to highlight on and maybe score on as well. So just don't lose that, because I really found that useful when we were doing the review.
Yeah, same.
Hello, Abby. Can you hear me?
All good. Yeah.
Oh, good. So I think one question I have, I like the multiple question because as the conversation, so there are some conversational piece into it as well. But there's a one afterthought question into this one. I think might be not a good time, or is it a good time to ask this question or not? Once the people actually submitting the result via multiple MCQs, so sometime all of them are the really good option for them. Like if you have multiple choice questions, sometime all are the good options for them. So when you calculate or you actually represent the data, sometimes it look very tricky to the public. Like some big people use option A, B, and C, and all are the good options for them. So might be it's time when we actually populate the data and show to the people that this is the response that we get from the community. From the representation purposes, it kind of get tricky, but still I like the MCQs format as well. I have actually put down some of the last time reading it out, actually edited some notes in it, in that as well. On top of one other question, since the KubeCon is coming up, so are we targeting during the KubeCon so people to submit these answers, or is it just for the interview people who want to submit these answers?
Same. I think I'm not sure if I understood correctly, but if what you are saying, I think if what you're saying I understood it, I think there is some misunderstanding. Oh, I went really bad at this. the so that those questions are we are trying to build a questionnaire to assess the maturity of the platform engineering initiative within an organization. So now, how is that assessment performed is something that we are not putting on the table now. Who's performing it also is not on the table now. What we want on the table is what we are measuring, how we're measuring it, and what we are asking to measure those things. So these are not questions that are going out to community or something like this. It's an assessment that can be used. I mean, it's going to be public, but it's not. I'm not sure if this is what you were expecting or this is what you are thinking, but it's not something that is just it's to be used by the cloud native community, absolutely, but it's not something that we are. It's not we are not capturing data for sharing data with the public in somehow. It's data that it should be used by the organizations to assess their maturity level in the platform engineering
there's a
industry.
world where we try and once it's done host an instance for a KubeCon, but not until we're done. Like if this gets ready for London, I would be ecstatic at this stage, right? It's definitely not going to be ready for Salt Lake City. So I think we can push for London, and I would like to push for London, but yeah, I think and whether or not as soon as it's public we want to push for public reviews, I don't know in there, but so we're almost halfway through, and I know that there were some concern or just frustration maybe of not like having progress in previous calls, and I hear that, right? Like it's tough trying to get everyone aligned and all that stuff. So I'd like to try something concrete quickly. And I see you, Matteo. I'm sorry. I'm gonna roll through on the concrete thing, and hopefully that will give you space to say what you're hoping to say. And if not, we'll make the space. But so in the spreadsheet that was posted in the chat, and I will repost it here. What I've done is I've taken the most. So Corbin mentioned doing the hard work of trying to get some questions for one of the aspects down. So what I've done is I've taken those out of the doc. There's a non-zero chance that the copy paste pasta created problems. So if it doesn't make sense, please shout. I literally did this while in this call today. So, you know, I just trying to get us into a shared document here. And what I've done is on the investment tab, I've added to the top of it goal for this aspect to try and challenge that idea that Marsh was raising of like, what are we trying to tease out here? Like, are there some high level sort of missions that we're trying to do, see if that will help us frame these questions. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. It's a test. And then more specifically, I have the questions down below starting at row 5 here, or row 6, which are some proposals. And we can talk through like, do these questions, like, can we massage these questions in some way? I'd be happy to introduce more to start with. We're probably going to need to cut this list down before we would consider it complete, but it's okay to do expand and then contract. So if someone feels there's a missing question, let's add it liberally right now, and we can look at condensing later. So that's sort of my ask is, I guess what I would start with, so that's what I'd like to walk through, and I'd like to maybe allocate to about, we'll say 13 minutes. So we'll say until 40. So that way we sort of still have plenty of time at the end to pivot if it doesn't make sense to follow through on this, but let's give it a bit of time. So, and that's what I'd like to walk through. So for the first couple minutes, if anyone has any sort of ideas for the investment aspect as to like what we're trying to tease out from these questions over and above, you know, where do you land on these boxes? Like, what are the sort of key themes that we're trying to tease out from the maturity model? Please give a shout, and we want to try and capture those up on row 1 where we have the goals for the aspect. So I for one, I'm going to pull up the maturity model myself and like revive my memory of the aspect. But if anyone has something on the top of their heads.
Can you share your screen by chance? Just to,
Sure.
I'm
Yeah.
on the phone because my laptop's dead at this conference, and I'm hoping I can still. Sorry.
Yes. Let me pull that up on some tabs. It'll
Yeah,
be more
maybe we
visible.
can just walk through how the spreadsheet works, because it took me like a couple minutes just to kind of just orient myself, and it might just help everybody be on the same page.
Hey,
Yes.
Matteo had his hand up and I think has to leave partway through. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I have to leave now. I just wanted to say one thing. If we can make like this call weekly to work on this, I think I would have more chances to be present personally, but I also think that it would be nice for progressing. So it's nothing about the content, it's just about like pacing it and being at least like once a week, half an hour in the same room. I know it's difficult for some people, but it could be the way to progress it.
And would
Just-
once a week, half an hour be better for you than every other week for an hour? Because that was the other proposal. But again, consistency is common across both those proposals, and it's just a matter of which one fits for different people, right? So
Yeah, maybe create a poll on the channel just to
and see what works.
Yeah,
I think I would really like the idea of pushing through until we go through the questions, all the questions and all the aspects, and then we switch back to 1 hour every other week. I like the idea of doing this tour de force last sprint and going for it.
Awesome. Then I will either on this call or I'll probably put in Slack a poll of when that half hour should be. And we'll try and pick one with the most votes, and appreciate it won't work for everybody, but we'll do what we can. Yes, cool. Thank you. And I think he may have had to drop off. So bye.
Yeah, I have to drop too. So
Okay, so
I'll catch you all when you go half hour. I'll try to jump in, and I think the benefit of doing half hour is that we can keep it tactical and less existential. So, thanks. Good luck. Catch you later.
bye. So in looking at the spreadsheet in the more tactical, so first of all, I will take the action of I will create a poll to find the half hour slot, and I'll post that in the group chat later tonight. And so that is something that we can definitely do, but we might as well take advantage of the next half hour that we've got and see if we can start to try and create a strategy to use in those half hour slots, right? So that's sort of my hope over the next 30 minutes. Corbin asked a very reasonable question of would it make sense to look through, I think it was Corbin, make sense to look through how the spreadsheet works. So so I think that's a very good idea, and I can show you. I'm not the expert here, but my understanding is that what we've got is a set of questions on the left. We've got anywhere from 1 to 4 possible answers on the right, which automatically get populated into this drop down. And that for now is all I was going to use for this spreadsheet. But I will say that one of the proposals of this spreadsheet that's worth calling out, and this is by no means a definitive decision or whatever, we have to sort of see where we get to, is that what these questions might allude to is a sort of a placing on the scale of 1 to 4 in a sort of more fluid way than just like you are a number 3, you are a number 1 level on the thing. And so what I think the proposal here is that if you are, you could potentially have questions here that would point towards a value, and depending on what you select, you get a certain score. And so for example, I selected this option C, which means I get a score of 0.5. The math is broken because I broke things probably. But you would get that, and then at the end of the day, you'd be able to sort of pull things together into a top score. I'd like to ignore that portion of the spreadsheet for right now so that we can focus on questions and answers, and then we can worry about scoring later. But sorry, William, I just wanted to get that. Go for it.
No, what I wanted to say, sorry, what I wanted to say is, please ignore the score. Please do not score anything, because so when I made that up, I used the score and divergence because I needed to calculate stuff. You were not around, Corbin, I think, but that's not what we should, because I find this what we this I find I personally I find this way of working without the scoring is going to help us with the conversation that we have later, right? With we being fluid, meaning, look, your investment is here, but the but your investment is at level 1, but we see that on these other perspective, you are level 3. So there is, and the things that are associated with each other, right? So the scoring, let's for the moment, let's put it, let's not worry about the levels. Let's just worry about the questions. Let's just worry about understanding the aspects maturity, or what are the things that we should ask to get those levels, those maturity understandings.
Yeah, so I think there was
just
kind of two takeaways for me here. One was, so at some point we need to like figure out, do the questions eventually lead us to a place on the maturity model, right? Do they or do they not? And so I think the function of this was to kind of help us like figure that out. So right now we don't have to maybe worry about that as much, but I think that's like something we really need to do, right? And then the second thing is that the way that I use the responses when I'm talking to an organization about this is to help them understand where they might have to do some work, right? So like if this doesn't like very simply help the organization figure out like, hey, I'm strong in this area, but I'm I'm not as strong here, this might be an area that I want to like look at, then I think we're still kind of missing the mark from my view, and I would love to get like others' perspective on that.
Yeah, I
so
think that's the
quick,
overarching thing that we've been talking about. Go on, Colin.
a quick anecdote, because I've run through several customers with the kind of the yes no version, like kind of Corbin's initial version, and just to echo a little bit of what William said before as well. One of the ways different organizations wanted to approach the scoring and the priorities a little differently, and so not having an overall score and finding an overall score for a particular aspect, like being like adoption, like having a score for adoption. Not having a score was helpful for us with the majority of the customers. And one of the ways that I did look at it, or that I presented it, was like, while you may, while organizations that are a 3 of a 4 or a 4 may be displaying some of the traits reflective of your answers, because you answered this way on certain aspects, or you're demonstrating traits of somebody who would be able to 1 or a 2 on that particular question, I'm actually going to drop you overall to a level 1 or a 2, even if you're doing level 3 or 4 like things. And it helped us prioritize and say, like, look, these are the holes that you can fill in order to get to your level 3 or your level 4. That was one way that I just used the responses, like, as a gap fill, right? And so, like, these are the things you need to address. Now let's go look at the feasibility of that and prioritize based on what your needs are and things there. So I was just kind of echoing some of that anecdotally. Getting too fancy on the score could be challenging to some folks, but same thing that Corbin mentioned there. So just like having run through and done it, just having a collection of your responses, and even a score, like a bad or a good or something for the individual questions, just having that collection was incredibly helpful.
Like an anomaly, essentially. Like, hey, you were ranking here, but just so you know, you have an anomaly here that you might need to shore up, like, or whatever. So
yeah, one of the best examples, one of the best concise examples of that was the is there an executive mandate or a sponsorship for this initiative? I saw that we left that question in there, and it was really interesting going through and doing the self-assessment with the team that's in charge of or thinks they were in charge of doing the platform, and how many people answered, "Oh no, is that bad?" It was really interesting to see that. And they're like, we did all of this work and all of this other stuff, and we have all this maturity, but we don't have an executive sponsorship or a mandate for people to use this. It's not a formalized company initiative. Like, that will kill the whole thing. So that's what we need to go address. It was just having that one insight was great.
Cool. Saeem?
Abby, I think you're actually describing earlier how the spreadsheet was laid out. So I'm thinking around the structure in the spreadsheet. So right now I'm thinking there's one question, then there's a drop down link, and then the 4 label is basically you can select from these drop down lists. So these are. So let's say if someone from the group want to give us a feedback on this thing, so what could be an ideal way to give a feedback on this one? Because I'm assuming everybody is mentioning forget about the score, just think about the question and the drop down we actually laid down.
Yeah, so I think that look, Excel spreadsheets are like Google Sheets aren't the best for feedback for like chats, but you can add comments to things and like so to the questions and to the answers. So this is a test, right? Just to be clear, we've historically used Google Sheets, or I mean Google Docs before, where you can see different styles of comments there and edits and things. This would be a test that on whether or not Google Sheets will allow us to have the conversations we need to have. So for right now, my proposal or my suggestion would be to get started with using comments on a certain like field. You can tell there's a comment when there's a yellow kind of thing tick on the corner there, the little corner marker, and we'll go through with that. And if we find that we're losing comments or people are unable to make comments that are sensible to themselves, like are matching what they want to get across, then we'll try and figure out a different format. So cool. So my ask, I guess now, because like we have a lot of hopes and dreams for this stuff, but the hard part is actually getting it to hit the road, right? The rubber hitting the road. And what I'm hearing is a lot of the success of the original set of questions has basically been with people who have trusted administrators of the survey, right? So it doesn't have to be consultants all the time, but vendors are trusted. We heard that in the last call as well from another kind of end user person, that like they felt like it was best suited to have a third party come in and administer the survey. And one of the core goals of this being released through the CNCF is that it should be self-administratable, self-takeable. And so that we have to test if that's viable, right? Like if we come to the conclusion that we can't write questions that make that possible, like we have to accept that. But I think we can. But that means we have to sort of get over this hump of like the tough part of doing that. So what I'd like to do is like to propose we try, and again, this might not work, but that's why we're going to try it, is if we were to look at this first row, this first aspect of investment, where we're asking the question of how staff and funds are allocated, and trying to figure out if you are in the more voluntary, temporary, dedicated team, product, or ecosystem world. Like, is there something about looking at the details in investment that we want to particularly tease out over and above like this sentence, right? So is this sentence enough for us to sort of generate questions off of? Or are there other sentences, other ideas that we want to sort of tease out and say like are important to us? And so I'll just scroll down here to the model detail.
Yeah, we do.
And see.
I've got something to say.
Yeah.
So we know what it makes. We already know what makes the investment scale level. Allow me to say scale level. Okay, I know it's not a ramping up for the level, but let's say scale level, to scale from one level to another. So why don't we just ask out those questions? We start from those basic ones. So if there is no budget allocated, but we have a couple of gig guys that are just trying out things, we know that that's level one.
So what you're saying, I think, William, is that the details that are written just in the table here, like, hey, we're asking the question of how staff and funds are allocated, and we can figure out if you have a dedicated team or not, is enough sort of guidance to ask the questions, that there isn't like sort of a meta conversation to be had around like anything over and above these things. There is.
But I think that we are, so I think that's why I think why we are stuck a little bit. We are over engineering and over complicating a little bit. Well, a lot, because we that's how we are. So
because we're engineers.
Yes, exactly. But fundamentally, we know certain things that are let's say the red flags of a specific behavior in a specific environment. We know that because we design platforms, we design infrastructure. So if there are just a couple of guys or a couple of engineers building up something that is supposed to be self-service because they want to ease, they saw it in some conference, they saw it somewhere, they want to try out, we know that it's level one. If they have a backing of somebody above them to say, hey, dedicate a little bit of time on this, dedicate, I don't know, 16 hours a week to just building something like this, we know that they are between 1 and 2. We know already this. So why don't we ask these questions of that tell us already where they might be, and then we drill down on very specific questions to fine tune those understanding that we made.
So, okay, so I think one thing I just like to call out is I don't think we know. So in the sense of like that's like a very high confidence that like we are like the holders of like complete information, which I think we have
No,
like
no, baby. No, sorry. No, okay, sorry. I didn't, in that way I sounded arrogant. No, I mean, we know what's written in the maturity assessment. So how the maturity
Yeah.
assessment is addressing those levels, we know that. So why don't we ask out if it's mapping there, and then we fine tune those understandings so that we can complete those conversations with the.
So are you saying that like basically your proposal is that the first question of any section is basically which level are you? And then we sort of test that like response through a number of more fine-grained questions. So for example, we'd have a question that says like, you know, how is your team staffed voluntarily with a budget of more than 5 engineers, with a budget that includes non-engineers like such as a product owner, and with a budget that includes like wider organizational change, including like I don't know, whatever. But basically like create a question
No,
that basically says these 4 and then say, oh, they answered 2. So now we're gonna ask a bunch
no,
of
no,
questions
no.
that sort of refine.
No.
Okay.
What
Sorry,
my
I'm sorry I'm
example?
misunderstanding.
It's okay. It's okay. I most likely didn't explain very well. So the lean example. Um, Look at the question. If you look at the spreadsheet, there is question 10 and question 11. So if you read first question 11, you are, so who's responsible for platform related investment within the organization, blah, 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 blah. There is an interesting take in that question. I mean, I'm not looking at the answers. I'm just looking
Yeah.
at the question. But the question, if there is somebody responsible, you are automatically not a level 1 or 2. You understand what I mean? And then if you go to question 10, how does your organization measure impact of the internal developer platform? That one, you are fine tuning an understanding that you already have from other questions. So you are building up on that. So in the what is the primary focus? Sorry, I know somebody wants to talk. I'm not looking at the screen, so I'm just reading the questions. So in this, what is the primary focus of the platform engineering team? Because you are asking this question, there is a team. You are necessarily not a level 1 or 2, because there is a dedicated budget for a team to have that. So already this question is bridging even into another aspect. So it's beautiful. I mean, if we approach it like this, I think it's fantastic. So we are. I think this is what we should be doing. I think we should be creating questions that are knowns written within the platform platform maturity model, and then fine tune those knowns and cross into other aspects.
I
Because
get what you're saying,
go on,
Will.
Chris.
I agree with the maturity model question about the funding, right? And it does need to be an exec, right? And there's different ways, different models of funding, but really is the question there is, are you funded? Do you have some sort of funding, or are you ad hoc? But I've commented before on, like you were talking about row 10. How do you measure? Sometimes, I mean, I'm talking from my own experience, sometimes the exact outcome isn't actually about the wider organization metrics and measurement. It's about the transformation of their department, right? So we've got to watch when we start talking about measure, because each organization is going to have a different measure. In some orgs and in kind of the happy path, a lot of people will think that the measurement is about, developer happiness, developer usage, things like that. Well, actually, my exec, who's kind of one of our reviewers of this work, isn't interested in that. That's almost like a byproduct. He's much more interested in the number of components and things he's got available via the platform, and the transformation he's done, and the training. And actually, the measure there is more about, it's a different type of measure. So it's not necessary. I just want to call that out, right? Because it's really important. Like the internal developer portal is only a tiny aspect of if you're exposing things via an API and a platform as a product. It's not the be all and end all.
And that's actually, it's worth calling out the biases there as well. Like every question, everything that we write in this space has bias in it, right? Including the maturity model that we've already released. The reason why we try and do it with such a large, like we had over 50 reviewers, is to try and, minimize the sharpness of that bias, right? But or like spread that out across more people. But it is there still, right? Anybody who's being involved in the stuff is a pretty advanced user of platforms already. That's going to be a bias, if nothing else. And so one of the things, Chris, that in the answers for there is that sort of developer experience, productivity, user satisfaction style question, and then there is the like business metrics. And there's a bias there of there could be a bias there of a perception that one of those is better than the other. And I would argue that some companies would say that developer experience is a more valuable metric of this stuff than business, metric, and vice versa on other businesses, right?
It depends on the size of the org.
Exactly. And so that's where and so I think this is where I feel like we did it with the maturity model. We managed to come up with a result that people trusted, and that we kept it sort of high level enough and sort of free from those sort of as much as we could, free from those biases and those implementation details and all that stuff. And I think we're going to be dancing with that again, is I guess on this assessment, right? We're going to be dancing even possibly even closer with the fact of for everything that we have to score on a question, we have to decide, better or worse, and that's going to be there.
So we do this with our kind of internal workload placement scoring, right? And we have questions, and it's all about weighting at the end of the day, right? We have questions that are weighted and scored, so they're of value. And there's questions that are answered that are really about the narrative and gathering some information. And maybe that's something we bring into the spreadsheet, right? Because there's a lot of brilliant questions there that, as I said earlier, I wouldn't like to use those. I wouldn't like to lose those. I'd like to still use them, right? But maybe they don't, like to William's point, they actually aren't really about the maturity model. They're kind of refinement questions, if you like. And if we can focus on the real ones first that relate to the maturity model, then we can come back to those ones. So maybe, as we're doing our review, if we know that some of them aren't directly relatable, maybe we kind of highlight those ones out and say, hey, let's not worry too much about, I'm just going to randomly pick some. Let's not worry about question 4 and question 8 and question 12. The ones we really want to focus on are 1, 7, 2, 12, just pick some numbers out and say those are the ones that are the key ones. We get those right. The rest of the stuff then is really about refinement and background info. I don't know, just a thought, right? Because that's kind of what we do internally.
I think what I'm just concerned, so just being completely frank, what I'm concerned about is that every time we jump into these calls, really good points get made, really good questions, but we don't actually move forward. Being completely honest about it. And
but this is the pre-work, right, Abby? Sorry, this is the pre-work that we were discussing about, right? Let's have calls where we have an agenda where we say, please, if you have questions, if you have already idea for questions, already idea for answers, drop them in a link, a document, something. We're going to gather them. We're going to talk about it in the meeting at day X at a time Z or Z, and we will go through it. Z, potato, tomato.
Again, just being completely look, this is a community effort. It's completely voluntary. It's a wide range of people. Nobody's doing this for their full-time jobs, right? So this is not me placing judgment or blame or frustration or anything on anyone else. But just to be clear, we've tried that. We have tried to get people to sign up to pick these things up. We have said we're going to be trying to do these things. Please drop questions into this channel, into this thing. So this is not something that is untested. But if we feel like we have a different, either it could just be time of day, time of year, we've got the right people on the calls now. It could be a different focus for the calls. I'm not sure. But so being concrete, we've got 5 minutes left in our hour here today. people have said they would like to meet every week, which I'm going to find a time for next week. Starting, I'll figure that out tonight. We'll get something on the calendar for next week. So we have somewhere around 6 to 8 days before we next meet. What can we do right now to set ourselves up for success in 6 to 8 days sometime next week when we meet?
Yeah. What homework do you want us to do? Right.
I'm sorry?
What homework?
Yeah. Exactly. And is there what is it that we can do to make homework that is, if it's homework, make homework that is viable, right? That people are able to actually participate in.
What I suggest myself is, do not write comments on the existing. I know I'm not saying that to accept what exists. I'm saying don't spend time writing comment on what has been written, the questions and the answers. Instead, write your own questions and write your own answers. Only focus on that. And then in the call, we go through them. In the call, we do that kind of unpleasant job of rejecting and accepting. It's got to be done. I mean, let's face it. I'm gonna write something that all of you say, "Oh, that's garbage," and we don't accept it, and it's fine. It's okay. So Corbin wrote a lot of questions. They were nice. Some others we didn't like it, and some of us commented, but those comments are not going anywhere. So let's the homework is, in the next 6 or 8 days, is write questions, write answers, and then in the call we go through it and we reject it and we accept it. And if you're in the call, you get to accept or reject. If you're not, and then we move forward. And the next call is adoption, and the next call is measurement. So the only thing I'm trying to say is, we are looking at a spreadsheet. If you move to the other tabs of the spreadsheet, there is nothing. So that means that we are a little bit over working on. We are passionate about it, but we're not moving forward.
So if what we're saying is we're asking people to drop. Sorry, go on, Colin.
Oh, sorry, real quick. I would suggest too, like, a lot of people are in here and we want to write the questions and we want to provide the questions and stuff. My approach, what I'm actually going to prefer to do as a counterpoint, I'm going to go answer the existing questions. Like, I'm going to go actually try to use the survey with the questions as is in the spreadsheet, and then raise questions from a self-assessment perspective on, like, what does this question mean? So I'll take that approach for my homework. Like, I'll be a user and answer what's there today.
But that's the thing, Colin. If you go in the spreadsheet, there are questions in investments. There are no questions in the other sheets.
Yeah, I'll just do the investment.
In the other tabs.
Yeah, I'm just going to go through the investment one. Yeah.
Right,
so I'll provide some feedback there.
So what are we going to do about the questions that were in the Word document? Are we going to put them in the spreadsheet as well as they exist? Because there were good questions there.
Yeah, Chris, did you like them?
So
yeah,
I have a hard stop. We've got 1 minute left.
My suggestion is whatever you like, take it and write and
where do you want us to drop it, William? What format do you want us to drop it in? Do we need a Word doc?
The spreadsheet.
The spreadsheet. Okay, great.
Okay.
In the spreadsheet. Cool. And we'll do investment first. So just drop that, and I'll put a note into our channel.
Yeah, exactly. The next call is investment. We only go through investment. What exists in the sheet? We're not adding new questions and new answers in the call. We're just we're going through what exists in the sheet, and we're saying yes, yay, nay, like they do in the parliament.
Okay, so we've got a window up until the next meeting to get things in investment. Does that stop us putting it in the other tabs as well if we're working on this?
Feel free to.
It doesn't stop you, but we're going to only work on investment. We're only going to work on investment. It doesn't stop you, but we only work on investment. I think that let's try in this way. Let's try to put us all inside a box.
It's a good way of herding cats, William.
All right, we'll see if we can get through all those questions in 30 minutes.
Put me in the box and then tell me to think outside of the box. That's
all right. I need to run. I have a hard stop on the hour. But I will get a poll in later tonight to find the time for next week. Well, the consistent time we will use for the next few weeks. And I will also try and summarize the ask so that more people can participate, because we don't have as many numbers here today as we sometimes have. So cool. We will give that a shot and see how it goes.
Thanks, all. Have a good one.
All right.
Thank
See
you.
y'all later.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks, Abby.